the holy and living God. Amen. Please be seated. So one of my favorite things to do in Easter season is to try to imagine what it would have been like to be one of Jesus' followers in the weeks immediately after his resurrection. That's like a little church nerd kind of thing for me, I get that. But I think it's an important exercise actually for all of us. Because in our tradition, we so often celebrate Easter as the climax, the ultimate triumph of God's power and life over the powers of the world. But Easter Day was really just the beginning, the first glimpse of what the resurrection meant or could mean for those who were with Jesus and for those who still follow him today. There was nothing easy or triumphant about that first Easter. You remember how the story goes. The women come to the tomb early in the morning to anoint Jesus' body. But when they arrive, the stone has been rolled away. The tomb is empty. Some of them run away in fear. Some don't know what to think. Mary Magdalene stays. Mary Magdalene, favorite, Mary Magdalene. And eventually, Jesus appears to her in the garden. She recognizes him. She is amazed. She runs to tell the others. But even then, even as word begins to spread that Jesus might be alive again, fear and doubt remain. Last week, we heard that the disciples were gathered together in a room behind locked doors, hiding. And in today's gospel, we meet two disciples walking on the road to Emmaus, trying to make sense of everything that has happened. And they say something that reveals how much uncertainty they still felt. We had hoped, they say. We had hoped that he would be the one to redeem Israel. Sometimes when we hear these stories, it's easy for us to stand at a distance from the disciples. After all, we know how the story ends. We're sometimes taught, at least they teach us this in seminary, to kind of marvel at the disciples' confusion and slowness to understand, their quickness to betray, to deny, to forget. We get it. We know what the empty tomb means. We know that resurrection means love is stronger than death. We know that hope is not lost, that injustice will not have the final word, that we are not alone. And yet, if we're honest, we also know it's not that simple. We know that faith does not take away our doubts, or our fears, or our grief. As beautiful as it is to celebrate the joy of Easter, it might be more faithful to linger in those early days, to imagine what it was like to walk away from everything you thought you understood, trying to make sense of it, trying to hold on to what you believed God had promised, even when you couldn't yet see it or feel it. We had hoped, they said. Most of us know what it is to say those words. We had hoped that a relationship would hold together, and it didn't. We had hoped for healing for ourselves or for a loved one, and it didn't come. We had hoped that after everything we've lived through in the last few years, the world might feel more stable, more humane, more whole. We had hoped that things would turn out differently. And instead, we find ourselves still walking, still trying to make sense of it, still carrying questions we don't have answers to. And it's right there, in that place of uncertainty, of disappointment, of trying to make meaning, that Jesus meets them on the road. They're walking along, talking with each other about everything that has happened, and Jesus comes near and goes with them. But they don't recognize him at first. He walks beside them, he listens to them, he asks them questions. He is fully present, and still they do not see. How often are we moving through something, trying to make sense of a loss or a disappointment or a shift we didn't choose, trying to make sense of all that is happening in the world around us. And we assume we're alone. We assume that the road ahead is ours to navigate alone, when in fact, Jesus might be already walking beside us, unrecognized, unnamed, but present. Sometimes we can catch a glimpse of it, just for a moment. The disciples arrive at Emmaus, and Jesus acts as if he's going on. And they say, "Stay with us. Stay with us because the day is ending. Stay with us because it's getting dark." And so he does. They sit down at the table, and he takes bread, he blesses it, he breaks it, and he gives it to them. And suddenly, their eyes are open. They recognize him. And then just as suddenly, he vanishes from their sight. It is such a strange moment. Just when they finally see him, they can no longer hold on to him. Just when they recognize him, just when everything finally becomes clear, they can't keep it. They can't stay in it. It's not that Jesus is no longer present. It's that he's no longer present in just one way. The resurrection is about the people beginning to see that the power of God was never meant to be contained to one body or one place or one moment in time. That in fact, that body needed to die, as brutal and unfair as it was. They needed to let go of the flesh of Jesus so that they could see that his life, that his light, that his love would always be with them, so that they could see that, in fact, the power of God was for them to claim and use and share, that their redemption, their salvation, was not something that could be handed to them, but was something that was becoming within them, something that would continue to unfold among them as they learned what it meant to live in the power of God's Spirit. The joy of Easter is that the love of God was unleashed, that the love of God was all around them. Like the Israelites who ate manna that rained from the sky to sustain themselves in the wilderness. The world was now dripping with the possibility and promise of what a world rooted in God's love could be. If they could only see it, if they could only reach out for it, if they could only live their lives like it was true. Jesus meets them on the road. He meets them in scriptures. He meets them at the table. And then he vanishes. Not because he's gone, but because he is now more present than he has ever been before. The late poet and activist Andrea Gibson wrote a beautiful poem for her wife while she was living with stage 4 ovarian cancer. Gibson was living with stage 4 ovarian cancer. And as she faced her own death, she reflected with both urgency and honesty about what it means not only for those who are dying, but for those who are left behind. She wrote, "My love, I was so wrong. Dying is the opposite of leaving." Sorry, it's a beautiful poem. "When I left my body, I did not go away. I am more with you now than I ever could have imagined. So close that you look past me when wondering where I am. It's okay. I know that to be human is to be farsighted. But feel me now, walking the chambers of your heart, pressing my palms to the soft walls of your living." This is what the disciples begin to discover, that Jesus is not gone. He is differently present. And it's only after he goes that they understand. Were not our hearts burning within us, they say. Only afterward do they recognize that something had been happening all along, that something was stirring, something was opening, something was alive within them. They don't stay in Emmaus. That same hour, they get up and they return to Jerusalem, back to the others, back to the community, back to the place they had just left behind. Because once they have seen, once they have recognized something of the risen Christ, they are moved, they are sent. They realize they are called not to hold on to that one moment, but to go and to share what they have seen, to begin to be part of imagining how the story might continue to unfold. The season of Easter invites us into that practice, to ask where God might be journeying with us already in ways we cannot see, to ask where God's love and light is at work within us and in the world around us, to ask what God's story is for us now, and to strive for the future that might be possible if we remember that God is with us, if we claim God's deep and abiding love for us, if we believe that God's power is our power, and that no empire, no weapon, no army can overcome it. Easter is at its core an exercise in imagination. It's a way of orienting our lives and practicing possibility. Easter doesn't mean that we don't still live with fear and doubt, that we don't still carry our own versions of we had hoped. But it means we don't let those things have the final word. Earlier this week, we had the enormous privilege of welcoming the Irish poet and theologian Pádraig Ó Tuama back to St. Mark's for a poetry reading and a conversation in our parish hall. Pádraig has a long history of work in conflict resolution in Northern Ireland and also around the world. He told us on Thursday night that he's part of a working group at Columbia University that's trying to understand how poetry and creativity might ease the hearts of those living in communities that are mired in conflict. And he says that sometimes the idea of conflict resolution is too overwhelming or even too abstract. How can we really resolve the problems that we have, or the divisions that we face, or the wars that we're stuck in? We don't have all the answers, we don't have the authority. It's almost too big to wrestle with the idea of conflict resolution. So instead, he invites people into something that he calls, or maybe other people have called, conflict imagination. He asks the question, what would you do the day after the conflict is over? If you could imagine that this conflict could end in some way that would be satisfactory to you and everyone else, how would you spend your day the next day after the conflict was over? And he says that people whose lives are engulfed in conflict often say the most simple things. I would read more. I would take up a new hobby or practice. I would travel to see family. I would relax and breathe and cook. I would just enjoy my life. And then he says, what would it be like if you tried to do some of those things now? What would it be like if you started to live now the way you imagine life might one day be? He notes that children have an amazing capacity for this, that you can still see kids turning jump ropes for each other in front of bombed out buildings in Gaza, that even war and poverty cannot completely crush a child's courage to play. We may not be able to resolve a conflict or solve a world problem on our own, but we can all imagine what our lives could be. We can all take small steps to begin to live like love has already won, like peace has already come, like joy is for us. And we have no idea what our small steps might open up for ourselves or for those around us. We don't follow a Christ we can contain. We follow a Christ who meets us and awakens us and then sends us out again and again back into the world where he's already at work. Easter is just the beginning. The love of God among us is still unfolding. It's ours to imagine, and it's ours to claim, and it's ours to live. Amen.